listen to Lacey God or a checkered flag.
Hello, and welcome to Racing Thoughts and IndyCar Podcast. I'm Megan Dennis,
And I'm Meg Taylor.
and we are back with another episode. I guess discussing Gateway before a little bit of time off. Well, I guess maybe not by the time this comes out. I don't know.
Time is an illusion.
It's summer. Time is not real.
Yeah, for both of us. It's summer break. So honestly, I have not been thinking about days of the week correctly. I thought today was Sunday.
It was Monday. It's apparently Tuesday. So
It's Tuesday when we're recording this. So apologies if our brains are a little scattered, guys.
right. I guess kind of jumping into things to cover. Not really a lot. Somehow we'll still make this an hour and some change episode, but really a whole lot in the week off and then even the week leading into Gateway. To be honest, nothing's happened yesterday or today, which is also a little weird for the world of IndyCar. So I'm sure without a doubt everything that's important will drop tomorrow. But it'll just be like, well, we'll cover it in a week.
Yep. The world of IndyCar was like, screw you two specifically. We're going to wait until we know that you have already recorded your episode.
I guess with that, though, some news that we did get, first off, is that the F1 Canadian Grand Prix next year is going to be held on the same day and roughly the same time. I think it's like a 2 p.m. start time. So right in the middle of the Indy 500. And I think this is stupid as hell.
And I agree. What the were they thinking? Like, sorry, pardon the language there, but like they have you have Monaco just been the same, race weekend for as long as I can remember.
Well, we knew Monaco wasn't going to be the same time this year. I don't remember the reason why, but there's some reason Monaco, it was always not going to be Indy 500 weekend. I honestly haven't been keeping up with F1 enough to tell you the reason why, but we knew we weren't going to get both this year. But the fact that, then F1 looked at this and they were like, oh, you know what we can do? We can put this on at the same time as the 500. And I think it's to some regard with the thought that, oh, we're going to draw away this crowd from the 500. And I'm like,
I don't think that that's going to happen
I don't think
at all. I think F1 is severely overestimating their pull within the United States, at least when it comes to the 500. Like, the 500 is the 500. It is the greatest spectacle in racing. It is, I know we say this as IndyCar fans and we love the series, but there are so many people out there who don't really care about the rest of the season who tune in for the 500. It is like a thing.
Viewership numbers attest to that.
Exactly. I don't know what F1 was thinking when they were doing this, in the sense of do they really think that they're going to have the pull to take away from the 500? Sure, there's definitely going to be some viewers who are taken away, but I don't think it's going to be anything that is going to be comparable to the 500 viewership numbers.
Well, and that's what I wonder, because from an American market standpoint, no, I think we're going to be just fine. I think the European numbers will be interesting to see how that compares, I guess. But I don't know. I think this goes back to the notion of we are not an F1 podcast. And this is one of those times where I'm glad we're not an F1 podcast, because this is stupid. And who's benefiting here? If anything, because I think they're trying to make it where Monaco, the 500, and Le Mans are not all on the same day or right in the same weekend. So that way, this year, IndyCar drivers could not go race in Le Mans because it's the same weekend. And that was a big issue because a lot of them do race in both series typically. And so I think from a Triple Crown standpoint, there was a little bit of that of let's spread them out a little bit, make it a little bit easier for those who want to be able to attend more than one of these big events for both a driver and a fan perspective. But from this F1 side of things, and I haven't looked at the whole calendar. Maybe it's their idea of going green and having I don't know. I don't get it. Regardless of whatever the reason, put it the weekend before, put it the weekend after. You didn't need to choose this weekend in the same time zone and in the middle of the 500. Just stupid.
It is. And to your point, they can't even say that they're doing this. I don't know, man. McLaren has stake now in all 3 racing series. So you have that going on, but it's just I don't know. That entire sentence and fragment of thought didn't really make sense. All of this to say that was really f***ing stupid of F1. And I don't think that they're going to have as big of a pull and viewership in the US and in like North America as they might be thinking. And just to stick it to it, I'm not going to be watching Montreal next year.
I didn't watch Montreal this weekend.
I
Definitely not gonna watch next year.
Yeah, no. Like, is this just like a me thing? Like, I don't know. I was seeing somebody else talk about it online too. I forget who, but like talking about the choice between watching the Indy 500 versus Montreal doesn't make any sense. Montreal isn't that big of a draw. If it was maybe some other track in a different place that somehow just ended up coinciding, maybe, but like it's Montreal. Yes, it is a very good track. Yes, it is entertaining. I think it's great. However, I also don't love races that start in like the middle of the day. And I say that as an IndyCar fan, it's very inconvenient for my schedule. So I really like when F1 races in the mornings because then I can like go about my day and do other things. When I have these races that are scheduled for like middle of the day, early afternoon, evenings, like IndyCar has been, I have to kind of build my day around it. But I'm happy to build my day around it when it comes to IndyCar racing versus I don't want to do jack when it comes to F1 and moving my day around.
F1's a morning sport.
F1 is a
F1's
morning
supposed to be
sport.
done at like 9 a.m. and then I can go on about my day.
Exactly. I have a routine. I wake up, I watch F1, I make pancakes, I go to the gym, and then I am done by noon and I can bed rot the rest of my Sunday. Like, that is my F1 routine. That's all it needs to be. I don't like these middle of the day things or the early evening or early afternoons or whatever. Not vibing with my schedule. So, stupid of F1. That's all
Stupid
I'm
of
going to say.
F1. That sums it up well. Let's move on. Let's talk
Okay.
about how our car, like we're the ones designing it.
Yeah, the ones that you and I personally drive. Our cars.
Also, the delay anything with those will also be put off till 2027.
Well, the delay is until 2028. So,
Anyway,
anyways, getting into that, we have mentioned on the podcast in a previous episode that we are supposed to be getting a new Dallara chassis in 2027. However, we have just gotten news that that is being pushed until 2028. And honestly, this is a decision that, from a technical perspective, I really, really respect. I guess I can kind of give an overview as to what these changes are going to be and what this looks like, and then I can get into my opinion of it. We have three bullet points that are going to be coming from this new update. So, a new spec chassis from Dallara will have new regulations governing the internal combustion engine design parameters. And then we will also have specifications for the energy recovery system or the ERS. And like I said, I respect this decision because Chevy and Honda are the two main engine suppliers here in IndyCar, and they have
Current.
been. Yep, they are the current engine suppliers, and they have been for many, many years. And they both have said that it's going to take at least 18 months to turn a new set of engine rules into a pool of 50 plus motor pieces that have been properly developed, track tested, and readied to supply half of the field. And as of June 2025, when we are recording this episode, that 18-month minimum is pushing into early 2027, which technically, if everything goes smoothly and according to plan and there's no delays or no setbacks or anything, it could end up happening for the 2027 season. But because that is, again, barring no delays, no issues, no nothing, they're kind of anticipating that there are going to be. So, they're like, let's not put a harsh deadline where we have to get it done by the 2027 season. Let's give ourselves a little bit of a grace period so that if it's ready, it's ready. But if it's not, then we don't have that pressure. And that is kind of why that I'm like, yeah, I respect this decision. They're not trying to push it out for the sake of pushing it out. They're really trying to make sure that everything is safe, that, they've developed everything the way that they possibly could, track tested it, and making sure that it's ready to be pushed out to the teams. So that's kind of a little bit about it. Some more information that I have been finding based off of the article from, where is it?
It's Marshall Pruitt with Racer.com, so like we can 100% trust that like this information is very much valid. It's very much like a whole source. We're really not getting into the nitty gritty. This is a really good article that I would highly recommend if you are interested in what's going to be coming for the sport. Go
Yep.
actually take the time to read it, and giveRacer.com, give Marshall Pruitt those clicks that, help drive the IndyCar journalism that we actually do need. Because at the end of the day, we are a podcast. We are just out here regurgitating and summarizing what is already out there. So just make sure you're supporting the journalists who are actually doing the hard work to get us these stories too.
Yes, and specifically this one because we get a lot of information from him and from this website. So it's credible, it's well written. We love this. The issue that this is now running into with the chassis and all of these regulations being updated and pushed until 2028 is that this is creating a gap year for 2027 where Indy needs a solution for extending the current engine programs. So Chevy is kind of locked in until 2028 so that gap year is kind of filled for them. They don't have to worry about anything. But then Honda is really kind of where it's at with things are questionable up in the air. Honda has not signaled any intentions to re-sign being a supplier after 2026. That's not to say that they won't, but that is just saying that as of right now, there's not been any indication. I don't know.
Well, with that though, I guess two things with it. One, I don't think it's anything shocking that this has been pushed a year. From everyone who follows this, who keeps up with this, like, I think it was initially everyone was kind of like, okay, 2027, yeah, sure, that'll happen. So the fact that that got pushed is really not, I think, shocking from anyone who really like is in the paddock and in the know of these things. I think what's really going to come into an issue is going to be with the powertrain licensings and with the engine suppliers, because Chevy's not going anywhere. Chevy doesn't want to go anywhere even past 2028. From my understanding, I think even like Penske does have a little bit of ties to Chevy as an organization too. So like I don't think we need to think about Chevy going anywhere. I think there is a very worrisome issue that Honda is going to pull out that is not new. From everything that I've been like reading, doing history stuff, there's been talks about like Honda leaving for quite a while now. And then it comes into the worry of like what then happens from a car standpoint, because they don't want one engine supplier in IndyCar. They haven't ever in the history of IndyCar wanted it to be one engine supplier. We have had that previously, but it's been quite a long time. The last time we had 3 engines was 2013 when Lotus was here. They were only here for a year before they pulled back out. So we've only had the 2 for quite a while, and I think that could be a real problem of like what happens going forward if Honda decides not to renew this. And then it's also the matter of then you get into, I guess, regardless of whether on how you feel about the hybrid as like a thing, we also know from the state of the sport, the only real reason that they added the hybrid engine was to keep Honda. Like that's all been but confirmed that that's why they did that and added all this extra weight to the car that quite honestly has not shown to be beneficial as of the point of recording today in terms of like what is it actually providing for the current cars. And so if we're looking at another 2 seasons of having to go through this, and then the main reason we as a series added it then pulls out, then I feel like that's going to get people very up in arms, I feel like. And I'm not saying I'm one of them. I don't know enough to know enough about that one. But I think that's going to be that could potentially be a very testy point from the world of IndyCar.
Absolutely. And then, like, we have Nissan, Porsche, and Toyota all being rumored as potential suppliers, but there's not been any commitment from any of those. But that could change. Again, all of this is in the article that we're referencing, but all of that could change once the series completes its regulations and the manufacturers have the ability to assess like the cost to compete, marketing appeal, and the technological relevance to their own cars. Because I know that's like a really big thing that a lot of these engine suppliers just across motorsport, they like to kind of test things out, see how they work, and then how can they be applicable to, their regular road cars for Joe Schmo off the street. So, like I remember talking to my dad a couple months ago at this point, and we were talking about, the Indy 500 and all of that kind of stuff. And he was like telling me a story of how he remembers the first year that they had like the downforce in the cars. And then all of a sudden you had these massive shifts in like the road cars and how they performed and all of that kind of stuff. So it is important for these like suppliers to kind of understand what they're doing in the racing series and then how can it be applicable for their own cars and, all of that kind of stuff.
I do know from what I have read that I would say out of those three, Toyota is probably the most likely one to come into the series. Also, I could be completely lying, and I'm honestly not going to fact check myself. I'm just going to say it. But I want to say that we've had Toyota as an engine supplier previously in the series. But I could be, like I said, I could be completely making that up. I don't remember my own history episode. It's in there somewhere. But I think Porsche is probably being rumored because of the Porsche Penske partnership in IMSA. So that would probably be why that one's being rumored. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a bad thing when you look at like how good of IMSA cars they produce. I think it could be a great engine supplier to bring into the series. But I also think like, okay, if we're looking from a consumer product of it, like Chevy and a Honda could go buy, but like I don't have Porsche money. Average person watching IndyCar doesn't have Porsche money. But you know what they do probably have? Toyota money, Nissan money. Like these are, I don't know. I think in a time when we are kind of wanting to get that more, what's the word they use? Like, I don't know. I'm not a marketing person. I don't know the marketing word off the top of my head, but like when it's the kind of direct to consumer, like you can be able to have access to it
Yeah.
stuff. Well, I think if it's brands that you kind of recognize, like Chevy and Honda are,
Mhm.
and that are attainable brands to the average person a lot more than like a Porsche, I think there may be more benefit from that. But also, like, whatever is going to get us better cars, don't care. Don't care what engine it is, just give us better cars that race faster and can handle the additional weight from the hybrid.
Yeah. And I did just look it up. Nissan, Porsche, and Toyota do all have hybrid power in some of their cars. So they do have stake in the game in terms of hybrid power. So it is something to consider. But I think my biggest concern is less so who is going to, come 28. I'm more concerned about the gap year for 2027. Like I think like it was brought up that Chevy might be the only answer to cover for that year, but then that's turning into all right, they all have the same engines and all like brings racing closer together maybe. I don't know. But my biggest gripe with it is then more so about Roger Penske once again co-owns and co-founded Ilmore Engineering, which is responsible for Chevy's IndyCar engines. So like once again, Roger Penske having that monopoly over everything puts a sour taste into my mouth. And, I've been very vocal about that, but it's just like I don't like that. So that's all I'm going to say.
I think it's a fine, very, very fine double-edged sword in the sense of like Roger Penske hadn't done what he did with buying the series in 2019, we likely would not have an IndyCar series to talk about right now.
Absolutely valid. But I don't like when things are monopolized like this.
Well, and I think it's gonna like I agree that like that gap year could really potentially be a problem and make it way too much of a spec series. Way too
Yeah.
like they're all driving the same cars. That's all
Yeah.
they're gonna be doing. Like I no, thank you.
Yeah. But like then it turns into all right, if it's they all have the same engines, they all have the same cars, then that is one less argument for how good of these drivers are, where it's like, okay, you can't even say that, oh, it's just the car that they have. It's, oh, they have the most amount of money, that they're going to have the best cars. It turns into, all right, well, they all have kind of the same cars. Who's the better racer, And we do need to throw this out there again. This is not a full spec series. This is a partial spec. So not everything is the same, even if they do only have one engine supplier for the whole thing. Even if it is just for the year, there are still several components that are going to be impacted by the amount of money that you have, the sponsors that you have, the team that you're in. Like all of those things are going to be impacted by that. So it's like, yes, it will bring the racing closer if it is the same engine, the same kind of car, but there are still going to be components that are able to change. So again, it puts more power and more kind of it highlights the driver a lot more, which I personally like.
I personally just hope we don't find out. But I think that's where I'm at. Because
Yeah.
I think in some regards, like yeah, it could highlight the driver, but then it also could just become like there's always going to be that element, but then it'll just kind of become a money game. Who can throw more money at their development because you can have
Isn't that what it is now anyways? Yeah.
yes, but no, because we do have the two engine suppliers.
Yes, but they have the same chassis builds, basically. They have all of the same specs and stuff. And, again, certain components are able to change, and that's where your money and development comes into play. But this is what they do now, anyways. They throw all of their money into the development of those non-spec pieces.
I mean, yeah. Well, yeah, because that's
So
what they can develop.
it's going to be exactly the same. It's going to be exacerbated if it's just one engine supplier for the year, for sure.
I think
Sure.
that's
It'll be
yeah, that's more
exacerbated.
what I was saying is that like I think it's just gonna be your top 2, 3 teams, you're gonna see a way bigger gap than like what we're currently seeing. And so like you could have some of our drivers who are outperforming their cars not get that opportunity, I think, if it were to go to one engine supplier.
I would take the opposite stance on that. I think that if it is one supplier, those drivers who are kind of outperforming their car might get the opportunity to showcase their drivings a little bit if the cars are kind of more on par with each other. But this is all for things that are 2 years away at this point. This is 2027. We still know nothing about what is actually going to happen for that gap year.
So I guess bringing it back to 2025 then, we'll
Yeah.
circle to our next topic, which at this point I feel like just needs theme music for me to be like, all right, it's time to talk about viewership numbers. So when it comes to Gateway, we average a little over 1 million viewers, with it being a Sunday night primetime race. This is the second consecutive non-Indy 500 and the third overall in 2025 that has hit over that million mark for average viewership. So I guess all in all, it's good.
Yeah.
Do I think it's maybe great numbers considering it was a primetime race? It doesn't feel like it, but also like I don't know. I don't work for the Nielsen report to know what average TV numbers look like in primetime on Fox. Probably should have done my own research and pulled that up, but I didn't. But I think the fact that we are getting consistently over 1 million is good. I don't have the comparison to last year for what that looks like. Something I did think was really cool, and I don't know if they'll continue it. I think this actually may have been like the people who sponsored the Gateway race. I don't know how to say it. I'm not going to try to butcher their last name, but I think they actually did this. But they sponsored the race being, I don't know if it was the whole thing because I didn't keep up with that way, but at least like a chunk of the race was on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram being like live streamed, and it was the actual Fox broadcast footage, which I think is a really, really good thing for them to increase viewership. Again, I don't know how much it was. Maybe, I think I saw someone say maybe it was just like the first like 30 minutes of the race, and then it was like catch the rest of it on Fox, which is good if you are getting people who have access to keep watching it on Fox. I think that goes back to an issue we've had all season that nobody's really at fault for. No one, at least on the IndyCar side, is at fault for the fact that just Fox does not have a way to easily stream their content within an app right now. I do know it's being in works to be developed for the time that like NFL season starts. So like that should mean that by this time next year, we should have it for the 2026 season. But I don't think we're in maybe a bad place for viewership. So I guess I'm going to walk back my statements from last episode where I complained a lot about it. I still think it's kind of cool and that wish we had more overview, but like it is what it is. I think we're getting consistently over 1 million, which does mean the sport is growing. And at the end of the day, that is why we are here. That is why, we've been championing for this for over a year now to see the sport grow, and why like Fox taking over IndyCar has been a good thing.
Yeah.
I also really hope this means we are going to get more oval night races.
Yeah, I really hope so because I actually had like a handful of friends end up texting me about watching the IndyCar race on Sunday night because they were like, oh, like it's Sunday night, that's usually when you have other primetime sports on. So I was kind of able to explain to some other friends, like, hey, this is kind of what the series is. And I ended up just kind of becoming the encyclopedia for whatever questions that they had, which I absolutely loved, in case that wasn't obvious. But I think it was really good. I like that we've had consistent numbers and like over that 1 million mark. And goes to say that all of the criticisms that we have had of the Fox broadcast have just been things that they can improve, and they have been. Like, again, I've said this in multiple episodes, but every piece of criticism that Fox has been given about, the IndyCar broadcast, they have fixed it pretty rapidly, like usually by the next race or at least the race after. And, I think that is also how you keep viewers is, all right, we're listening to your feedback. IndyCar fans have a lot of opinions. They have a lot of thoughts and feelings. It's why we have the podcast. We have a lot of thoughts and feelings. And so to hear that Fox is like a big broadcasting company is taking these things as the fans say them into account, it makes me want to continue watching it on Fox. It makes me, I don't want to say not criticize Fox, but it makes me more intentional with the criticism that I am giving because I want those criticisms to be taken into account, and they have been. Every single thing that we've talked about, I think, has been addressed by Fox in some form or fashion, whether that has been an active change or, okay, we heard you. We know we can't do anything about this, but, for the next time, that's what this is going to be.
It makes me excited to see what's going to come of this. Like, it's like the growth is there, the desire for growth is there. If I'm the people at Fox, what I'm doing right now is I'm looking to see, like, okay, we have 4 oval races left, which is crazy that there's only 4 of them left. But we have 4 oval races left of the year. 3 of those have the potential to be moved to night races. The only one who can't is Milwaukee, and that's just because they don't have lights at their track. So
Yeah.
Milwaukee, we cannot move. But the other 3, so both Iowa races and Nashville, have the option, at least from a track standpoint, to be able to run cars at night. Well, if I'm Fox and I'm seeing like, okay, we're getting that viewership, especially depending on what the lead-in is, maybe I start looking at my broadcast schedule and seeing like, okay, can we bump something to get IndyCar back to this primetime slot and continue to see what that viewership is? Because I think that's something that
one of the Iowa races, not at prime time, but it's at 5 p.m. So it's later, but
it's gonna be bright sun, middle of Iowa in July. Sunset's not till 9 p.m.
Dang, that's crazy.
Like the sun's not setting any times during that race.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, so that would be a good one though. That like bump it back.
100%.
I don't care whatever's behind it. Bump it, move it. We don't need it. But yeah, that's the viewership numbers on Gateway, and I guess now let's talk about it. What'd you think of Gateway?
I loved this race. I thought it was such good racing, and I mean, like, a few notable things had happened, and I want to start on my least favorite thing so that way we can end on some high notes. My least favorite thing that happened was the Joseph and Louis Foster crash. That was the most terrifying thing, and like, I don't know if I had missed it because I was in the kitchen when it happened, but like, it felt like we came back from commercial and all of a sudden Joseph's car was upside down.
No, that's exactly what happened is that
Okay,
they had
I
cut
wasn't
to
sure if I
commercial and like they literally sent it to commercial. They hadn't even started rolling the commercials yet. It was they were doing the outro video with Joseph and then like they had to cut back to broadcast
Yeah,
because he wrecked. So it was on top of it being like a very nasty accident.
it was scary.
Very, very nasty. And like it was very jarring because it wasn't, for better or worse, we don't have Townsend and James yelling into the mic of like, oh, okay, something's about to happen. We're about to see the camera cut.
Yeah,
It was like we come back and it's like Joseph's upside down and sparks are flying and oh my
fuel
god, what
leaking.
just happened?
Yeah, like you could see the fuel leaking down the aero screen. And, we are incredibly lucky that it wasn't as bad as it could have been. But
He
that
was
does
so
not,
close to jumping pit wall.
yeah,
So close to jumping pit wall.
it was, I don't recommend going and watching it if you didn't see it. But did he just like lose it?
When they
Happened is-
interviewed him after was that something happened. Like I think he had like a pretty bad snap, and then he got up into the marbles. And once he was up in the marbles, like he was not coming back down from
Yeah.
it. And at that point, he was a passenger, and there was nothing he could do. And there was a couple other cars that were very lucky they weren't collected in it. And then it was just one where like he came down on Joseph, and there was no anything that could happen there.
So I just took a look at the article on the IndyCar app that kind of talked about it a little bit. So it just says that choosing to pass Pillow on the left side turned out to be the wrong one, as that's where Louis Foster's damaged car was sliding after the wall contact off turn 4. Their impact was ferocious, with New Garden launched upside down. So, not great.
No, not great.
And like, thankfully, they're both okay. But then you also have to remember that this is the second week in a row, or like the second race in a row, where Louis Foster has had a nasty crash.
Very big,
Very
big
big,
crash.
big G-force, gnarly hits. And we're lucky he's okay, in the sense of physical body looked fine. But then you also we're going back to a conversation that we've had in previous episodes where we've talked about, all right, what's the concussion protocol on this? How is his head?
For anyone, though, who is curious on the concussion protocols that IndyCar does, go watch Scott McLaughlin's vlog from the last race that he put out on YouTube. Or maybe it was from the 500, wherever he crashed big recently. And he shows it in depth and how he had been cleared that day. IndyCar requires them to come back the next day, go through full concussion protocol completely again, and get another MRI done. So
That's good.
kudos to IndyCar and they show the different tests they're doing. It is not your basic level concussion protocol that IndyCar is doing. I'm gonna shout out Scotty Mac. Go take a look at that if you're interested in what those protocols are, because it was very nice to see based on the conversations we've had, to see the depth that they are actually taking. And even though they cleared him, they still said, yeah, but we're gonna do it again.
Yeah. See, I like that part, because I feel like, again, this is coming from an outside perspective. The last time that I was in organized sports was, high school, college. Like, I haven't had to have that in a long, long time. But again, I've said it, I think it was last episode, where we did talk about concussion protocol and the impacts of all of that, where, okay, my high school, I was patient zero with concussion protocol. They didn't have one. So they kind of were just like, yeah, sure, whatever. Then they did get concussion protocol. And it's still, as an athlete, you can kind of cheat the system a little bit with a lot of these concussion protocols that sports teams have. And as you get older and as you get into, more professional levels of the sport, you're going to want to do everything in your power to play and to participate and to do the thing that you are supposed to be doing. And so you kind of find a way to get around it, even if it is a little more in depth. And usually once you get cleared, that's kind of it. They don't really do anything after that. So then to hear that IndyCar is like, nope, you're going to come back, that to me says a lot. And I think that says a lot about the safety team, which, as a listener, how much we love the AMR safety team. I think for a lot of what we don't know about their systems and protocols and things, knowing now that, after Scott's whole video and everything kind of going through, seeing how in depth that is, makes me feel a little bit better about the things that we don't see. All right, they have clearly thought this through.
It's a testament over and over. It's kind of like Hinge has a YouTube video with a safety team that's the whole thing's about 15 minutes long and actually really goes in depth and all the technology and how they keep wanting to update that technology and everything to make sure how they talk about his big wreck in 2015. So I mean, we're always going to be pro safety team here. And with that, the fact that if you watch Joseph's crash, literally he hadn't even stopped moving and the safety team guy was over the wall. May have been a little bit of his own safetyness. So sir, let the big heavy car stop moving before you jump that wall. But
yeah,
good job.
But, I think it just comes down to, as well, these big crashes are kind of like a stark reminder of how dangerous the sport actually is. I think sometimes, I know for me, sometimes I kind of forget that this is an incredibly dangerous and crazy thing for these drivers to be doing and how risky it is. And I was in the kitchen, dead stopped, hand cover mouth. I thought I was going to be sick. I was so anxious for it. And it was oh yeah, these drivers are actually nuts. They willingly do this knowing that this is a possibility. So y'all are crazy, respectfully, but geez.
Yeah, no, it's I was watching it and my mom was here visiting for my birthday and she was in the other room watching the Coastal, whoever they were playing, I can't remember, game. Go Shots, by the way. They're one win away from the finals of the College World Series. They're 25-0, so shots up, everybody. Regardless, but I literally was just no, Joseph, and my mom was running in. She went, what? crash. She was
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Away. Mother was not very invested in the race, if anyone was curious about my mother's feelings on IndyCar. Her other time that she walked in, she came in, she looked at the screen, she went, Rossi's not doing very well. He needs to fix that. And then walked away and didn't come back again.
Okay, Mom.
So,
Meanwhile,
Alexander Rossi, I'm sure you're listening to this podcast because we know you're an avid podcast listener. Susan Dennis says do better.
yeah. Meanwhile, my dad just texted me about it, about Joseph's crash, just being like, that was scary. Thank you, Father. Thank you so much. But, again, it was one of those crashes that does remind you how dangerous the sport is and how good these drivers are at what they do on a regular basis, where we don't really typically have these crashes be that bad. Again, this crash was not anything either of them could have done to kind of save it or change the outcome. This was one of those, all right, you just kind of have to let it ride, unfortunately, which is again the scary part. But like I said before, I had friends who were watching the races for the first time and they were like, is that normal? And I'm like, no. But I'm happy to say it's not normal.
See, and I almost want to counter that of like, it feels like the crashes this year are bigger, are scarier. I feel like in comparison to, I mean, this is only my second full season, but like in comparison to like last year,
Yeah.
we are seeing a lot
But
more
that's
scary crashes this year.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is that that level of crashing historically has not been the case. And I think we talked about this in our post 500 episode too, because we talked about all of the crashes that happened. And a lot of it does come down to the extra added weight with the hybrid in the rear and how it's not necessarily fitting within, the chassis and the specs for the car as of right now, and how that is impacting how these crashes are, because up until the 500, we didn't have any cautions from crashes, really. We didn't have these big crashes. We didn't have cautions.
We had one in like 1.5 billion laps.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it was like 408 laps, I think, of green flag racing until we finally got a caution, from the beginning of the season. And, maybe this is coming down to ovals with the oval season, because these, apart from the Detroit race and that crash with Foster and Rosenquist, like those big crashes have all been on ovals, again, taking away the Detroit crash. So it's another thing to, for us to keep in mind as we have, the new chassis coming for 2028, is how is that going to impact the impacts?
We know that from an engine, like in the chassis and everything rebuild, like that they know it's a problem, that that's why they're like, we gotta get a new car. But now we're running into the problem of like, all right, that's now been delayed, which means we have 2 more seasons of potentially really scary crashes.
Yeah, but then does that come into play of like, all right, would you rather them rush it?
No, not by any means. Yeah,
Exactly.
no,
So
I'm
it's
not
like,
countering that. I think it's just that's the
it's the
there's
problem.
no
It's a
winning. There's no winning
lose-lose.
on that. Yep.
Yeah, it's completely a lose-lose situation in this. It's like, all right, well, we can either expedite it to the 2027 season like it was originally planned, and kind of regardless of how things turn out with this 18-month minimum development, pushing it out, and like all right, it's not really ready, but you got to have something out. And then you have a whole new list of issues that could potentially come up, versus, all right, another year of these types of crashes, but come 2028, we don't know, hopefully that these things are addressed and that these types of crashes don't necessarily happen anymore. It's like, again, you don't really win.
Yeah, no, it's completely lose-lose. It's just, as always, and it's always the risk of the sport, and we've been very lucky that we have seen no fatalities since, 2015, but we have seen 2 really big career-ending injuries with Robbie Wickens in 2018 at Pocono, and then Simon Pagenaud in 2023. I think it's 22 or 23, I can't remember for sure, that have been results of this. And then goes back to the fact that we've had the same car since 2012. And it's just,
I want to know
honestly,
why have they not done any upgrades to the chassis in the car since 2012? Like, at least with F1, we have our gripes with F1 as an entire sport, but at least they consistently kind of upgrade their cars and their regulations. Granted, not always for the better, but they're always at least trying to keep things updated. So I don't know. I don't know if that's something that I should know, but
I
regardless.
know, I know James Hinchcliffe talked about it, and I think it was back when the hybrid was coming out previously on Off Track. I am not going to try to repeat what he said because I don't remember and I don't want to be putting false information out other than like from a series standpoint. Everybody knows it's been way too long. And
Yeah.
like the hybrid got way delayed longer. And I think that actually was an issue with Chevy and Honda. And there was a lot of argument with that on like getting that. And that's also been like all of it kind of led to delays. I think you also had COVID impacted stuff because I think there was a chance that stuff was supposed to roll out, 5 years ago that then got delayed.
And
And
kind of the hybrid was introduced as a concept in 2019. That wasn't ever going to be a feasible turnaround for them to be like, in 2019, we're going to do, the hybrid engine. It's going to be ready for the 2020 season. Yes, COVID absolutely,
well, and I'm not
screwed it.
talking about the hybrid with that. I'm saying like I think there were supposed to be rule changes that have happened before now, but everything kind of got pushed on delay.
Yeah.
There was a lot of factors that have led into the fact that it has been 13 years since there has been a last real big let's change everything rules and regulations.
Okay.
All right. Anyways,
Anyways,
gateway.
yeah, I think that kind of sums up our whole situation with Joseph and Louis Foster. Moving right along, we had a really wonderful podium.
You were almost right.
I was almost right.
Universe picked the wrong ECR car, but you were almost
However,
right.
yes, it picked the wrong ECR car. However, I love that Christian got his first podium. Yes, very close to being my podium prediction. Okay with it not being the full podium prediction because it got 2 out of the 3. I'm going to say it's going to be 2.5 because it is an
I'll give
ECR.
you that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm good with that. I think when you get it fully right, we have to end the podcast. Like, I'm not ready for that day to come.
We're not going to end the podcast, but I am going to retire from my podium predictions. I don't know what I would do the day that I get that full on podium prediction.
You better record it. Whatever it is, record it so we have that. I do want to talk about Christian Rasmussen and like not just okay, it was his first podium, but son, what a race.
He had a
23
killer race.
23 positions, 71 overtakes. 62 that ended up like counting.
Easy. That is absurd. Absurd behavior that I love to see. And it was just like one of those things too that don't get me wrong. I love Christian. I love ECR. That is not my team and that is not my driver. And so, I'll pay attention when like you or Cass say something and I can like, oh, let me tune into what he's doing or let me tune into what the ECR boys are doing. But I think he is just such a lovely human being and he's so kind from when we had met him that I'm
Such a
just like, sweet little awkward boy. As an introvert, I can also understand how overwhelming like being on all the time can be. And especially when you are in their position, you have to do sponsor things, you have to do X, Y, and Z. And like you are just constantly on. So I get it. And he was so nice that I was just like, you know what? I have adopted you. I love you. I adore you. I want nothing bad to ever happen to you. And I love being able to celebrate this podium for him. And again, like you said, he had a killer race. So that was like such a fun thing to see and to celebrate for him.
Well, and it's also quite honestly very interesting to counter that with like Rossi's race. And this is no hate towards Alexander Rossi because we all know that I love him. But like, as my mother said, like he needs to do better. Like he finished 11th, so he moved up in the grand scheme of things one position. But his teammate who is doing his first full season of IndyCar. I think a lot of people forget that because he's not labeled a rookie, but it is his first full season. Was able to move up 23, and that's I really don't think that's any fault of like Rossi's by any means, but it's just very, very weird how like different those cars ended up performing this weekend.
I don't know. I don't know what went down with Rossi because again, I wasn't
Not
really.
much. That's what happened.
I would like at that point, what does that come down to? Does that come down to his strategy when he was pitting? you know, like his pit cycle. I don't know. I don't remember. It was
That
a
I think
remarkable
it's
race.
an unfortunate reality of like it was another case where I think we missed a lot of the mid-pack stuff within
Yeah.
this race. Someone else, I didn't write this out. Someone else I want to shout out who honestly deserved a podium spot. Again, I'm not mad about this podium at all, but someone who deserved it, Connor Daly. Because
Yes.
God, did he made up like 9 positions in 2 minutes.
It was insane. But that's the thing that he does. He did that last year at the 500 too. He did that
He
there.
highlight. Like Connor loves the well, Iowa when he came in for Jack Harvey
Oh
and
my God.
his medic, and it's just like, Connor, as he said on his like Instagram, like it's really bittersweet because it felt like that first win was there and it
Yeah.
didn't happen.
It really should have.
Yeah. Again, not for this podium, but
No.
like Connor Daly for as good of probably like, I don't know, 230 laps he had. It's a shame that like I don't know what happens. I'll listen to Speed Street this week and probably find out because he'll tell us. But like something clearly happened where like he went from although I guess maybe it was that whatever caution came out that had Scott Dixon
Yeah.
leading for a while. That was weird.
That was so
IndyCar was
strange.
made up right then.
Like, what ended up happening? Like, did he kind of lap the whole thing and like kind of came to the back of the pack?
So Scott
Like,
Dixon
still on
ended
the lead
up
lap?
so because he did not pit based on IndyCar rule. They explained it on the broadcast and I still didn't really understand it.
Yeah.
That like it was something to do with like because everyone else pitted for whatever reason, he got to keep his position. But then he pitted and then he ended up way, way back there.
That doesn't really matter anyways. But like that was kind of one of those Scott Dixon doing Scott Dixon things.
I was expecting Scott Dixon to win. It's just gonna
Honestly,
be like,
at
yeah.
that point, yeah.
I was like,
It's
of course
very,
he is.
very possible.
Yeah. And then also in more exciting news, we had a Cal Kirkwood first oval win, who continues to be the only person who can stop Alex Palou.
Truly. Like, I love this for Kyle. It makes me so happy because listening and watching him win too is just pure joy. And it's just like, yeah, I like when he wins because it's just infectious. And I'm like, you can tell how much it means to him, how much it means to his team. And again, he's what, won 3 races now this season.
Yep.
And, the conversation very early on in the season was this is now just Alex Palou's season and he's going to run away with it. Who's going to be the one to beat him? And so far, Kyle Kirkwood is the only one who's able to beat Alex Palou. And like, I love that. One, because I love Kyle, but two, I think he earns every single one of these wins. It's not one of those, he takes the lead for the race and he's gone. He has earned these, he has fought for them. He has made some incredible strategy calls. And he's
Shout out Brian Herta.
Shout out Brian Herta for that.
Brian Herta, you can come on the podcast anytime you want.
We have questions. I'd love to pick your brain. But like it just kind of goes to show, I think, especially highlighted when Kyle wins, how much of a team like that this crew is. And
Yep.
like how close each of the teams and the crews are. Because again, you have, multiple entrants in a team. They don't share a pit crew. They have their own individual teams. And again, when you see someone like Kyle Kirkwood, who has been coming up through, NTT, like Indy Next or Indy Lights or whatever, like he's come up through the system.
I don't think anyone has had a better career getting into the IndyCar system than Kyle Kirkwood. Like, not just Indy Lights, like where he did not lose, but I'm talking like full.
Yeah.
No one has done it better than Kyle Kirkwood. So it's nice to see it's finally like he's getting to show it in IndyCar. And sorry, I know I cut you off, but like I think when you talk about the beginning of the season, where it's like if you had asked people who's the best Andretti car, they would have all said Colton.
100%.
And I think. And rightfully so. This is not me shading Colton because I think Colton's amazing and I think Colton's gotten screwed over a lot this season so far. But I think the problem is sometimes that gets highlighted a little too much, that then that takes away from the fact that, like, Kyle Kirkwood has always been, like, he's been this dude. This is not shocking for anyone who knows about Cal Kirkwood. It's just now he's finally getting that opportunity. And I so wish he had not been disqualified at the 500 because we would have a proper
Yeah.
We have a title fight right now, like
Yeah.
a true proper title fight right now
Yeah.
that we are not getting. I mean, we'll talk about that. We are getting closer to it,
Yeah.
but we are like it should be like a 40-point game.
And like kind of going back to what you were saying of like Kyle getting almost overshadowed by Colton. And again, this is no tea, no shade to Colton. We love him.
We do love
You
Cole.
know, you mentioned he's kind of gotten screwed over, especially the past 2 seasons, with just really unlucky things that have been happening to him in his races where he has had these chances to really run away with things, to win. Again, those weird things happen, and then all of a sudden he's out of contention. You know, I feel like Kyle has been overshadowed and people have forgotten his run into Indy. And, you know, you put your name with Andretti, you kind of are expected to have certain things and show certain things that, you know, he was doing, but wasn't getting acknowledged because, again, Colton was kind of the one that everyone was looking at. And Kyle, Mr. Consistency for all of last year, for this year too, even. He's been so consistently good. So to have Kyle get his first oval win and to hear him in his post race interview where he was like, I am no longer just the street guy, you know, like he was really worried about only being considered a good street racer. And now he has that oval win under his belt. And he's like, okay, I'm not just a one trick pony. And to hear that confidence boost from him, I think this is really going to carry in through the rest of the season. And I cannot wait to see this because a confident Kyle, I think, can really pose an issue for everybody else on the grid. And I love it.
Oh, 100%. I also think this kind of goes to the testament of like, okay, this build up for the title fight. Pato involved in this too. You know, he got second. I didn't make a note of that just because like it was a second place finish for him, which is good. It's wonderful. It's exciting.
The second place finish is fine, but as we know with Pato, he has never satisfied with a P2. And especially after the race that he put in for this with Gateway, he honestly could have had a real shot at the win. But again, the racing gods were not in his favor on that one. And it just went to Kyle. Good for him. Again, well deserved win. Sucks to see Pato got P2 again. But, you know, it's coming down to, all right, we're chipping away now at this championship fight with it's not just Polo show anymore. As of right now, it's Pato and then you have Kyle, right?
Which they're separated by 2 points.
They're separated by 2 points. And it's like what?
Pato's 73 points back,
Yeah.
74.
That's a very feasible gap to close. And especially when we know Polo does not do well on ovals outside of.
And that's the point I was going to bring up too, because this almost comes to test of like, I don't want to say it was the 500 a fluke, but like, was the 500 a fluke? Like, you know, of like, it wasn't, he didn't qualify well. He doesn't qualify well at ovals.
No.
He didn't have any sort of a remarkable race at all. Like, I don't know where he finished. I don't really know what he did. They didn't really talk about him because he wasn't anything to talk about.
Yeah,
And that
he's
goes
kind
back.
of in that mid pack that gets ignored.
And I think that's just one that's like, it's going to be interesting to see when we consider that, like, okay, we have 4 oval races left.
Mm-hmm.
We have 1 street race left, then a whole bunch of road courses. I think with the 3 that we have in the top right now, that could really play out to be very interesting. I do want to go into kind of the second point that I have here, though, is the fact that, though, the team that should have won this race
Oh.
did not have anyone finish. All because of weird stuff. In the sense of, like, to say that, like, Penske should have won this race. They should have won. Like,
They qualified well. They have good cars on ovals. They have good drivers who are good on ovals. So it's like weird things that happened. Like Joseph got, you know, had the DNF because of that crash. Scotty retired. I don't even remember what he retired for.
Something with his tire. It was 3 separate incidences.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even like, okay, something happened to all cars and like it was that. So Scott had something with a tire, and then Will, I want to say it was something with his suspension broke, and I may have those 2 flipped between the 2. But that's something with like his suspension broke, which caused Will Power to hit the wall, and he was able just to literally, you could see him fighting the steering wheel the whole way to be able to get it back.
Yeah, so according to the IndyCar app, Will Power had a rare tire failure that sent his car into the turn 4 wall. Joseph had the crash, and then Scott McLaughlin retired from the race half hour later. The team with an event record 9 wins, include blah blah blah. Okay, they didn't even say what he retired for.
Okay, so maybe his was something with a suspension because somebody was suspension. So if Will was tired, then that must have been Scotty with suspension issue.
Yeah.
But like, and even like David Malukas, like he's in a Penske-esque car, just they call it AJ Foyt, let's be honest, with that technical partnership. So like
Yeah.
when you consider that, that was the top 4 car. They had the top 4 cars in that race. And then
Mhm.
the Penske's didn't finish. And like David honestly should have won that race
Yeah.
too. Like once, especially once like, the others were out, it should have been
Could have been.
David's.
Yeah.
Ferrucci had a top 7 start, and then nothing really. I mean, I think he finished okay enough. I think,
No, he
but like,
was in contention for a minute. Like, at least he was climbing pretty high.
well, he
And
led for a while, but then it was
yeah,
a pit cycle issue.
it was a pit cycle, and then like the caution just kind of screwed up his
Yeah,
timing with it. But he was in contention for a while. I mean, we have our feelings about it, but Ferrucci is very good on ovals.
he's a good
He
driver.
he is a good driver
As
for
much as how we feel about him as a person, he is
yeah,
a good driver.
yeah.
Like, as much as people talk about like David getting that seat when Will Power retires or if he's not renewed this year, I think honestly, Santino Ferrucci probably should be just as much in contention for it.
Yeah, but then you think about likability.
Does Penske care about that, or does Penske want wins? And I don't know if either of them can get you that, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think there's like the regard of like both should honestly be in contention for
Yeah.
that seat. But we are in the contract
We're
negotiations
just
with
talking
that.
about pure driving
Yes,
ability.
yes,
Yeah.
100%. Um
Not the other
I
stuff that comes with that.
I personally would like Will Power to keep his seat. So Roger Penske, if you're listening, please re-sign him.
Yeah.
Let me keep him just a little bit longer.
Yeah. We love the weird man.
Yeah. So I put this in here. This is actually Will Buxton's tweet that I just copy pasted. I didn't feel like linking it. But Will Buxton said that for us in regards to this podium, this was your 2018, 2021, and 2023 Indy Next, or Indy Lights as it was then known, championship, a sign that the road to Indy ladder really works. And I think that's really important to talk about with this podium too,
Yeah.
because as much as people try to say like, oh, IndyCar is where washed up F1 drivers go, or like, the guys who fail to make it into F1 because they've gone through the F1 feeder series, well, they'll just go to IndyCar and they're going to be able to excel amazingly there. Really? Because I don't see it,
I don't
and I don't think you've seen it really at all. Just saying.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. Who on the grid has come over from like the Formula Series? You have like Callum Ilott, you have Robert Schwartzman,
Marcus
Marcus
Ericsson.
Armstrong, Marcus Ericsson. Who else?
I would assume Pillow because I know he raced with all those guys, but I don't know. I don't know when he
Yeah, I
did
don't know.
what. I don't know his
Yeah.
story. Lungar was with
Lingard, yeah, that's right.
Alpine.
Yep.
Felix Rosenquist
Felix.
raced with Prima.
Oh my God, I did know that. Yeah. Oops.
Like, well, Alexander Rossi is another one. Another failed F1 guy who came over.
Quote unquote failed. Okay. What does failing in F1 even mean? I have thoughts and opinions. I digress. Whatever.
Well, apparently being a failed F1 driver does mean that you get to come win the Indy 500. Both have done that.
That is
Also,
fair.
Takuma Sato. So we've got 3 of them, actually.
Oh shit, yeah. Okay. So that's something to think about.
That's neither here nor there.
What does that actually mean? We don't know.
Absolutely nothing. I do think, though, it is a testament, though, that, like, this is a point in the positive category that the road to Indy through the Indy Next, Indy Lights feeder series clearly is working to get those people who have put in the time for IndyCar that it works. Because we're not necessarily seeing the same results from those who went through the F1 feeder series to an extent.
I mean, you think about it, it's like the cars are entirely different. And like, as if you're studying a like a language for your whole life, and then all of a sudden you get to college and you are taking a new language course. It's like, yeah, it might be similar, but it's not the same at all. And it's an entirely different language that you have to learn. And you can't really coast on your prior experiences. And so I love watching the Indy Next races. I think they're so much fun to see the young drivers come through and to see who the potential is for, the future. As of right now, the Indy Next grid, I'm so excited about. And like you said, it's a testament to the track actually working. The track to IndyCar works.
Well, and I think honestly, like your point of like, oh, it's a different language. I think Marcus Armstrong's a good example of that because on his maybe now defunct podcast, I don't know. He talked about like doing his testing with IndyCar and how like much like how he found it easier almost. But like now that he's been in it like full time, okay, like Marcus really doesn't have a lot to show for it. Like
Yeah.
he's fine, but there is not a title I would give him above fine for
Yeah.
what he has produced in his 3 seasons.
Yeah. I mean, he's got the Indy 500 win
Not
and
Erickson, Armstrong.
Armstrong. Okay. I thought you said Erickson.
Yeah, maybe I mixed them up a lot. I was definitely talking about Marcus Armstrong though.
Okay.
Oh,
Well,
with a podcast.
that's why I was so confused when he mentioned his podcast. I was like, Erickson has a podcast?
He might. I don't know.
Uh,
You know I accidentally switch their names a lot.
Me
It's not on purpose. I know
no.
who they are.
Do you though?
As people, yes. They're both named Marcus. Not my fault. Anyways, Marcus Armstrong is who I'm
Marcus
talking about.
Armstrong. I think he's had flashes of brilliance, and I just don't think that it's been consistent. And he's not been in this for 3 years. This is his second year. He was a rookie last year. He
Mm-mm.
didn't do ovals last year.
Yes, he did because he crashed out of the 500. This is Marcus Armstrong's 3rd season
I could have sworn. Okay.
because he was with CGR for 2 years and now he's with Meyer-Shank.
Well, time doesn't exist and it is a social construct and is made up. I digress. Whatever. Point being, he has had his flashes of brilliance. And I mean, 2 years with CGR when you have, Scott Dixon and Alex Palou as your teammates, kind of insane. Like you're not going to be getting as good as either of them. And I think that might have been part of it, but I don't know.
I stick with like it's been fine. It's been nothing too, but like it just goes to the notion of like things that he's talked about, like, oh, it's easy, oh, it's whatever. And then it's like, okay, cool, you've been doing this for 3 seasons. You came in thinking it was going to be so easy, and it was easier than everything you did through the F1 series. And if anything, like he's been proven wrong.
Yeah, that's true. I think a lot of that also comes down to attitude and how do you see yourself kind of going through this? Because it is a massive change. And if you're going into it under the assumption of, well, I came up through the Formula One, European racing, pinnacle, quote unquote, of motorsport, then, and like you have what's the word I'm looking for?
Arrogance?
Yes. That's exactly what I was looking for. I was like going to say like holier than thou, but like not really what I wanted to say. But yeah, there's almost like that arrogance that you have coming from the European racing circuits and series that kind of screws you a little bit. Like you have to give the respect in order to kind of make it work for you. And I think that those who have been showing their respect towards Indy and the whole process of it and how different they are. Different does not mean one is better than the other. It just means that they're different.
Yeah.
That's my tangent.
And I think it's like you can attest to the ones that have accepted that there's that learning curve. It has been able to show. Alexander Rossi, I think, is a very good example of that one, quite honestly. Maybe less so in recent years, for whatever reason that is. But if you look at like, especially his time with Andretti, 2016, he wins the 500 as a rookie. That was, maybe not meant to happen. He should have won 2018 with the 500. The amount of race wins he had. And that's because he came in and he's even admitted to he had that chip on his shoulder of he thought, it was going to be easy. It was going to be a transition. He knew more than this. And he was quickly humbled and he realized that. from the first time he stepped on an oval and did that and was like, all right, I have to learn. If I'm going to be good at this, I have to learn and I'm going to respect the sport. And then that's shown in what he has been able to do over and over and over. The amount of race wins that he's had, the fact that he's won the 500, the fact that he has finished second in the championship more than once over 10 years. That's a testament of like, you have to have an ego to be good in the sport, but your ego can also play a fault in things as well.
Absolutely. All right. I think that kind of brings us to the end of it. Do we want to talk about our championship standings?
Go through them real quickly. In 10th, Marcus Armstrong. 9th, Colton Herta. 8th, Scott McLaughlin. 7th, Will Power. 6th, Felix Rosenquist. 5th, Scott Dixon. 4th, Christian Lundgaard. 3rd, Cal Kirkwood. 2nd, Pato Ward. And still leading everything for the inevitable forever, it seems like.
Yes, he's still currently leading, but like we said earlier, that gap is closing. Everyone else, Pato and Kyle, maybe get some more wins. Close that gap a little bit more. Make it a proper fight.
And Alex Palou, respectfully, in the most safest manner possible, with some dull races.
Repeat that? I did not understand what you said.
Take Road America off, Mr. Palou. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Take a vacation, let everybody else catch up, and then we'll have some fun at the end of the season with a proper championship battle.
All right, we will be back in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's all. Bye.